The Trap of the Invisible Wall. Part 1: The Decision and the Cleaning. The morning light in late September lay over the old apartment like a thin veil, pale, tired, and polite. Olena Petrovna, 72 years old, elegant even in her house slippers, sat by the window with a cup of weak tea and looked at the reflection of her own face in the glass. The city was waking up outside, but the world inside her small apartment had its own rhythm. Slower, quieter, more careful. That morning, she had finally confirmed it. The apartment would be sold. She had agreed to move in with her daughter, Svetlana, who lived 20 kilometers away, in a new residential complex with elevators that didn't groan and walls that didn't echo. It should have been a relief. No more endless stairs, no more loneliness. And yet, something inside her clenched. When Svetlana arrived to help her pack, she noticed her mother's hesitation. "Mom, we can go get some coffee before we start," she suggested cheerfully. "There's that little cafe near the bus stop, across the park." But Olena's face froze for a split second. No, she said quickly. "I don't need coffee. I have mine here. Besides, I'm feeling a little dizzy lately. I'd rather stay close." Svetlana sighed. "You always say that, Mom. You never go farther than the bakery on the corner." Olena smiled. That same polite, evasive smile she'd perfected over years. "I'm old, Svetochka. I don't need adventures." Her daughter didn't argue, but she looked at her mother with a faint frown. There was something strange in her stubbornness. Not physical frailty, but a quiet, invisible boundary that she refused to cross. After Svetlana left, Olena began to clean. She had made up her mind. Before she left, she would clear away the unnecessary things, the layers of time that had gathered like dust. She polished the wooden table until the light bounced off it like a memory. She folded tablecloths embroidered decades ago, wiped the framed photos of her late husband, her mother, and herself as a young woman, smiling awkwardly beside them. The apartment was neat, but heavy, like a museum. Everything had its place, but nothing moved. When she reached the storage room, the air turned thick with dust and age. There, in the corner, stood a wooden wardrobe she hadn't opened since the early 90s. Its door stuck slightly, protesting against being disturbed. Behind the old coats and boxes, her fingers touched something hard and rectangular. A small chest, the kind her mother used to keep sewing threads in. When she pulled it out, the wood was cracked, the hinges rusted. Inside, wrapped carefully in wax paper, lay a thin, worn-out notebook, a diary. Her mother's handwriting covered the first page. Maria P. 1948. Olena's breath caught. Her mother's diary? She hesitated, then sat on a stool and began to read. Part 2: The Secret of Maria and the Invisible Wall. The first pages smelled faintly of old perfume and damp paper. The handwriting was young, alive, almost girlish. Maria wrote about the construction of the building, how proud she was to move into this new block on the city's edge. She described Kyiv as a place that breathes, but has sharp teeth. Olena smiled at the poetic turn of phrase. Her mother had been only 20 back then, full of life, full of dreams. Then came the part about a man, Yuri, a young engineer who worked on a project across town. Maria wrote about their walks, their laughter, how he'd promised to take her beyond the park to show her the new bridge over the river. But the tone shifted one evening. "I tried to cross the bridge today," Maria wrote, "but when I reached the middle, I felt something. My chest locked, my hands went cold. The city on the other side looked like another planet. Couldn't breathe. I turned back. Yuri, I thought I was being silly, but I know what I felt. There's something beyond that place that doesn't want me there." Olena frowned. It sounded like a panic attack, though Maria never used such words. As she kept reading, the entries grew more desperate. "I hear whispers sometimes, or maybe my own heart tells me, stay within your streets. Don't go beyond. It's safer here." Olena's own hands began to tremble slightly. She remembered, without wanting to, her own strange episodes. The day she tried to take a tram to Svetlana's district and felt her legs turn to stone at the stop. The sudden dizziness at the edge of the park. The quiet excuses she made every time. High blood pressure, bad weather, too much noise. But now she saw it differently. It wasn't coincidence. It was inheritance. The invisible wall her mother described was real, if not in stone, then in blood. The final entries in the diary broke her heart. Maria had stopped seeing Yuri. He wanted me to move with him, but I can't. I'd rather stay where everything is known. I will be safe in my few streets. Here, time doesn't move. Here, nothing changes. It was as if Maria had built her own prison and locked her daughter inside it without meaning to. Part 3: The Battle for Freedom. That night, Olena couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, watching the faint reflections of streetlights tremble in the glass. The diary lay open beside her, her mother's fear staring back at her from 70 years ago. Tomorrow, Svetlana would come to finalize the sale. Tomorrow, she would have to leave. But what did leaving mean if every cell of her body screamed to stay? She realized something terrifying. This wasn't just fear. It was loyalty, a strange, inherited obedience to her mother's boundaries. Her heart pounded as she thought. If she left, she would betray her. But if she stayed, she would vanish, like her mother had, into quiet walls and years of dust. The next day, Svetlana arrived early, brisk and energetic. "Come on, Mom, we'll be done in 2 hours. The movers are already downstairs." But Olena hesitated. "Maybe we shouldn't rush. Maybe I'll keep the apartment a bit longer." Svetlana froze, frustration flashing in her eyes. "Mom, we've been through this. You can't live alone anymore. You barely even go outside." Olena tried to explain, but how could she say it? That she was afraid of something invisible? That she felt her mother's shadow at the end of every street? Instead, she just said softly, "It's my home." Svetlana's voice rose. "It's your prison." Then she turned away, her shoulders stiff. "I'll be in the car when you're ready." When the door closed, silence filled the room again. Thick, accusing. Olena sat down, shaking, and opened the diary one last time. Near the back cover, in faint pencil, was a final note her mother had written. "Maybe the wall is not there to protect us. Maybe it exists so that one day, someone will break through it." The words struck her like a breath of air after drowning. Her mother had known. She hadn't built a curse. She had left a challenge. That night, Olena decided. Tomorrow, before the movers came, she would walk beyond her border. She would go to the bridge. Part 4: The Breakthrough. The morning was gray and damp. Olena dressed carefully, her best coat, a silk scarf, gloves. She slipped the diary into her purse. When she stepped outside, the familiar streets seemed both comforting and foreign. The old lilac bushes by the fence, the cracked pavement, the smell of autumn. Everything whispered, "Stay." Her heart thudded painfully as she walked toward the end of her neighborhood. The tram stop, the small park, the bridge beyond it. When she reached the point where she usually stopped, her knees trembled. Her chest tightened. Her breath turned shallow. Every instinct screamed to turn back. The sunlight flickered like a warning. But then she heard her mother's voice. Not literally, but deep within. "Maybe the wall exists so that someone will break it." She took one step forward, then another. The panic surged. A wave of dizziness, a rush of heat. But she didn't stop. She clutched the diary against her chest and whispered, "This fear isn't mine." And just like that, the air changed. The world didn't collapse. The bridge didn't vanish. The city beyond stood waiting, ordinary and alive. Her heart still raced, but there was light in it now. Trembling, real light. At the far end of the bridge, she saw a small cafe. People inside were laughing, stirring sugar into steaming cups. She walked in. The warmth hit her like a promise. "1 cappuccino, please," she said to the barista. Her voice cracked slightly, but she smiled. When she sat down, she opened the diary once more. The pages fluttered in the draft from the door. Alive again. She pulled out her phone and called Svetlana. Her daughter's voice sounded tense at first. "Mom? Where are you?" Olena looked out the window, at the other side of her old invisible wall. "I'm having coffee," she said softly. "And I'm ready to move in with you now." There was a long silence on the line, then a quiet laugh, full of relief. Olena smiled and closed her eyes. For the first time in decades, she felt not fear but compassion, for the woman who had built the wall, and for the woman who had finally walked through it. Outside, the city kept breathing, not with sharp teeth anymore, but with open arms.